You cannot be hurt by a stranger's words. You can only be hurt by your own agreement with them. Read that again, because right now, somewhere in your life, a comment is still living in your head, an insult from years ago, a look someone gave you, a silence where an apology should have been. And it is still cutting you, not because it happened, because you keep opening the wound yourself every single day and calling it memory. Most people spend their whole life building walls against a world that was never the real threat. They lock the doors, they guard their name. They rehearse comebacks for fights that already ended, and still, somehow, they get hurt again and again by the same kind of person, the same kind of moment. That is the trap. You think the enemy is out there, the co-worker who talks down to you, the family member who never approved of you. The people online who type things about you they would never say to your face. It isn't them. It is the part of you that hands them the knife. There is an old idea, tested by men who lived through exile, slavery, and the death of their own children, that says something most people never want to hear. Pain from other people is optional. Not easy to avoid. Optional. And once you understand why, you stop reacting like prey and start standing like something that cannot be cut. That is what this video is about. Not becoming cold, not becoming numb, becoming impossible to hurt, the way steel is impossible to hurt by a closed fist. Watch this through to the end, because the second half changes how you see every insult, every betrayal, and every silence you have ever survived. Here is the part almost nobody tells you. You already survived the worst thing anyone ever said to you. You are still here, which means the words themselves were never the danger. What kept hurting you was something quieter, a belief you never questioned, a voice inside you that agreed with the insult before you even had a chance to think. Over the next few minutes, we are going to take that voice apart, piece by piece. 7 ideas. Each one removes another handle the world uses to grab you. By the end, you will not just understand why you got hurt, you will know how to make sure it stops happening. But first, you need to meet the man who found this out long before anyone had a word for therapy. Almost 2,000 years ago, a boy was born into slavery in the Roman Empire. His name was Epictetus. His own master broke his leg, and he limped for the rest of his life. He owned nothing. He controlled nothing. By every measure the world uses, he had every right to live broken. Instead, he became one of the most respected teachers in Rome. Free men traveled for weeks just to sit at his feet. And the lesson he taught them was brutally simple. It is not what happens to you that hurts you. It is your judgment about what happens to you. Say that back to yourself slowly, because it is the whole video in one sentence. A man can insult you in a language you don't understand, and you will feel nothing. The same words, in your own language, from someone you respect, can ruin your entire week. The words did not change. Your judgment did. This is the first weapon you are going to take back today. Principle 1. The gap. Between something happening and you reacting to it, there is a gap. Most people never notice it exists. The comment lands, and the anger is already there, instant, automatic, like a nerve reflex. But it is not a reflex. It only feels that way because you have never once slowed down enough to see the gap for what it is. Picture a man reading a message from his boss. Sharp tone. No please, no thank you. His jaw tightens before he even finishes the sentence. He spends the next hour rehearsing what he should have said, replaying it, letting it ruin his focus, his mood, his whole afternoon. He thinks the message did that to him. It didn't. His interpretation did. He decided, in a fraction of a second, that the tone meant disrespect, that disrespect meant danger, that danger required a reaction. None of that was the message. All of that was him. The practical action is not complicated, but it is uncomfortable, because it asks you to slow down in the exact moment you most want to speed up. When something lands on you, whether it is a word, a look, or a silence, stop, before you feel the reaction take over. Ask one plain question: what actually happened, without the story I am adding to it. Strip the event down to bare fact. He sent a short message. That is all that is true. Everything else, the disrespect, the danger, the need to defend yourself, you built that part yourself, in the gap, without even noticing you were building anything at all. Once you can see that gap, you own it. And a man who owns the gap between event and reaction cannot be baited the way he used to be. He becomes the man whose calm nobody can steal, because nobody ever had it in the first place. It was never theirs to take. But knowing the gap exists is not the same as controlling what fills it. That takes something sharper. Principle 2. The insult only works with your permission. Here is something uncomfortable. Every insult that has ever landed on you needed your cooperation to land at all. Someone can call you lazy. If you already secretly believe you are lazy, it cuts. If you know, without doubt, that you are not, the word bounces off you like it hit a wall instead of skin. This is why the same insult destroys one man and means nothing to another. The insult was never the variable. The belief underneath it was. Think about the last time someone mocked something about you that you were completely secure in. Maybe your height, your voice, your job. It probably didn't even register. You might have laughed. Now think about the last time a comment hit a nerve you didn't know was exposed. That one stayed with you for days. The difference was never the other person's cruelty. It was your own unhealed agreement with what they said. This is where most men make the mistake. They try to fight the insult. They argue back. They defend. They explain themselves to someone who was never going to listen anyway. But you cannot out-argue a wound. You can only close it. The action here is simple, and it will feel strange the first time you try it. The next time an insult lands, don't ask how to respond to the person. Ask yourself a harder question first. Is there a part of me that already believes this? If there is, that belief is your real work, not the person who said it out loud. If there isn't, you already know the truth, and the words were never a threat to begin with. They were noise. A man who has done this work stops needing the world's approval to know who he is. That is not arrogance. That is armor built from the inside, where nobody else can reach it. Now, most men watching this will nod along and change nothing. So let me prove this isn't just theory. There was a man, a manager at a mid-size company, who spent 15 years chasing every promotion, every bit of praise from people above him. One afternoon, during a routine review, his director said one sentence that gutted him. "You're solid, but you're not leadership material." He didn't sleep that night. Not because the sentence was cruel, it wasn't even said unkindly. It hurt because some part of him had already believed it his whole life. Since he was a kid, nobody picked first for anything. The director's words simply said out loud what he had been whispering to himself for 30 years. For months, he tried to prove the sentence wrong. Worked longer hours, took on more, waited for someone else's approval to finally silence the voice. It never came, because approval was never going to fix an old wound. Only he could do that. Eventually, he stopped trying to prove the sentence wrong and started asking why it had so much power over him in the first place. He found the real belief underneath. Not that he lacked skill, that he had decided, as a child, that being overlooked meant being worthless. Once he saw that belief clearly, the director's sentence lost its grip completely. Not because anyone apologized, because he finally closed the wound himself. That is what Principle 2 actually costs. Not comfort, honesty. Principle 3, the view from above. Now you need the second man in this story, because his version of this idea is the one that turns a private philosophy into a weapon you can use in the real world. This man did not learn Stoicism sitting in comfort. He learned it while ruling an empire under constant attack, while burying his own children, while marching to wars he never wanted, writing his private thoughts down at night by candlelight. never expecting a single other person to read them. His name was Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man alive in his time. And in his private notebook, the one we now call Meditations, he wrote himself instructions on how to survive people who tried to hurt him. Not soldiers, senators, flatterers. Family. The kind of people who smile at your face and undercut you the moment you turn around. The exact kind of person you are probably dealing with right now. One of his repeated habits was what modern minds now call the view from above. When someone's cruelty or pettiness threatened to consume him, he would picture himself rising above the moment, above the palace, above the city, until the person insulting him shrank to the size of an ant, arguing with another ant over a crumb of bread. It sounds strange until you actually try it. Picture the person who hurt you last. Now picture them from a mile above the earth, then from orbit. Their comment, their tone, their little victory over you, it is still happening down there, but from here it looks exactly like what it is. Small, temporary, barely a flicker in a life that will end for both of you. This is not denial. Marcus was not pretending pain doesn't exist. He was refusing to let something that small dictate the size of his reaction. The action is this: the next time someone's words start to take up more space in your head than they deserve, force the zoom out. Picture the argument from 100 years in the future, when neither of you will be remembered by anyone still alive. Most fights cannot survive that kind of distance. They shrink because they were always small. Only your nearness to them made them feel enormous. A man who can shrink his enemies with a single mental habit stops needing to win every argument in real time. He already won it before it started, because he refused to make it bigger than it was. But there is a deeper problem hiding underneath everything we've covered so far, and this is where most men listening are about to feel exposed. You have been treating other people as the source of your pain. That was never entirely true. The real fight was never between you and them. It was between the part of you that wants peace and the part of you that is addicted to being right, to being seen, to being validated by people who were never going to give you what you actually needed anyway. Before we go further, meet the third man in this story, because his life proves what we are about to cover in a way no comfortable teacher ever could. He was born into a good family, given every advantage a young Roman could ask for. He grew wealthy, brilliant, and became the private tutor, then the closest advisor, to the most powerful man in the world. Then, on nothing more than a rumor, that same regime shipped him off to a bare, wind-blown island for 8 years, with no trial and no clear end date. He came back. He rose even higher than before, wealthier and more respected than ever. And he spent his final years writing long letters to a friend, teaching him how to build an unshakable mind while serving under a ruler who was growing crueler by the season. In the end, that ruler, a boy he had personally raised and trained, ordered him to end his own life. He did it without panic, calmly, teaching until the very last breath left his body. His name was Seneca, and no one in this entire story understood the price of a stolen peace better than a man who lost 8 years to a rumor and his life to a former student. Principle 4. The trade you keep making without noticing. Every time you let someone's opinion control your mood, you are making a trade. You are handing them your peace in exchange for the small, bitter satisfaction of being angry at them instead of honest with yourself. It feels like justice. It is actually surrender. Seneca wrote something that cuts through most of the excuses men make for staying angry. He said that the man who is easily provoked should ask himself what exactly was taken from him. Usually, the honest answer is nothing, only his composure, and he handed that over himself. Think about the last argument you couldn't let go of. What did you actually lose? Not what you felt like you lost. What was physically, materially taken from you? Most of the time, the answer is nothing except your own calm, and you gave that away for free. The action here is to start noticing the trade in real time. Before you react to someone, ask yourself plainly, what am I about to give this person in exchange for my anger? Usually, the answer is your entire evening, your focus, your sleep, sometimes your whole week, spent circling one sentence someone said to you in passing and probably forgot within the hour. A man who sees the trade clearly stops making it. Not because he no longer feels anger, because he refuses to pay full price for something that costs the other person nothing at all. Principle 5. Premeditate the wound before it comes. Here is where this stops being about reacting well and starts being about never getting caught off guard again. This was Seneca's daily discipline more than anyone else's. In his letters to his friend Lucilius, the ones he wrote for years while watching his own position at court grow more dangerous by the month, he described a practice he called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Every morning, before anything bad happened, he would sit and imagine the worst version of the day: betrayal, insult, loss. Not to become pessimistic, to remove the shock. Shock is what breaks most men. Not the insult itself, but the fact that they never saw it coming. The blind side is what makes the wound deep. If you already walked through the possibility in your mind this morning, calm, with your guard up, the actual moment lands on ground you already prepared. It is worth remembering that the man teaching this survived under a ruler who could end his life on a whim, for years, without ever being caught off guard by the danger he lived inside of every single day. The action is short, but it works if you actually do it instead of just listening to it. Before you walk into a hard conversation, a room full of people who don't like you, a meeting where you know criticism is coming, spend 30 seconds picturing the worst thing that could be said to you. Sit with it. Notice you survive it, even in your imagination. Then walk in already armored, because you already paid the emotional cost in private, where nobody was watching. A man who rehearses pain on his own terms is never ambushed by it on someone else's. Principle 6. Silence is not weakness. It is a wall. Most men think the way to prove they weren't hurt is to respond fast, sharp, clever, to win the exchange. But a fast response usually proves the opposite of what you wanted it to prove. It shows the hit landed. Silence, real silence, the kind that comes from actual peace and not suppressed rage, is the loudest possible answer a man can give. It says, without a single word, that what you just said did not even reach me. This does not mean staying silent out of fear. That silence shakes. It has a different texture, and people can feel the difference even if they can't name it. The silence you are building is the kind that comes after the work from every principle before this one. It is earned, not performed. The action is to practice responding to provocation with one full breath of nothing before you say anything at all, not for effect. To actually check whether you have something worth saying or whether you are just reacting because staying quiet feels unbearable in the moment. Most of the time, you will find the urge to respond fades before the breath even finishes. A man who can sit in silence while someone waits for him to break has already won something they cannot take back. Principle 7. You are not building a wall, you are becoming one. This is the shift almost nobody makes, because it requires giving up the idea that the goal is to defend yourself better. The goal was never a better defense. Walls can be broken down eventually, no matter how thick. What Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca were describing across their entire lives, a slave, an emperor, and an exile, was not a stronger wall. It was becoming something the attacks simply passed through without leaving a mark. The same way wind passes through open space instead of slamming into stone. A man obsessed with defense is still, underneath it, afraid. He is still treating other people as a threat large enough to require constant guarding. The man who has actually done this work stops guarding, not because he is careless, but because there is nothing left in him for an insult to grab onto. The old wound is closed, the belief underneath it is gone, The need for approval has quietly starved to death from lack of use. This is not something you arrive at in one video. It is a daily practice, repeated until it becomes who you are instead of something you do. You came here thinking the problem was other people. The comments, the silence from someone who should have said something, the people who hurt you and never even noticed they did it. The problem was never them. It was the wound they found already open, waiting. Close the wound, and there is nothing left for them to find. That is what it actually means to become impossible to hurt. Not cold, not distant, simply finished handing people a knife and calling it self-defense. If even one of these 7 ideas found something true in you tonight, type discipline in the comments below. Not for me, for the version of yourself that is done being hurt by people who were never even paying that much attention to you in the first place. You already survived every wound that made you who you are today. Now decide whether you are going to keep bleeding from them or finally close them for good.